allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming out tonight to our City Commission meeting. First, I would like to just make an announcement that we had an executive session scheduled for 5:30, and at that time we chose not to do that. We did not have anything at the executive session tonight. So, next on our agenda is that we have a commission report concerning Franklin Street, and that will be changing that to a one-way, and that will be presented to us by our city engineer, Mike Michael.
I think I'm going to move up to the podium too so I can look at the stuff behind us as we go. All right, thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. As the Mayor mentioned, we're here to talk about the idea of changing a portion of Franklin Street to one-way. This actually came out as an idea several years ago when MTA started the process for the Transit Community Center over there. We were kicking some ideas around the table one day as part of one of their pre-submission conferences, and this is one that kind of stuck, that made sense to look at again as we got closer. And so about 3 months ago, 2 months ago, somewhere in that time frame, we got a formal request from MTA to reinvigorate this idea and take a serious look at it to see if it really did make sense or not. We've done some looking at it, and our opinion has not changed from when we looked at it a few years ago. And Tracy, if you want to pop up the first slide we were looking at. Other one.
Oh.
The other first slide. Well, and I have copies of this that folks can get afterwards if they want to look at it a little bit better. But basically what we have here, real schematic representation of Franklin Street between 7th on the left-hand side of the two pictures and 4th Street on the right-hand side there, essentially. The bottom frame there is the way that the road is now. We have traffic traveling in both directions from right to left in the pictures. Along that whole stretch of Franklin Street, and that east to west traffic stops at every intersection, kind of what we've been used to downtown. Most of the east and west roads stop about every block other than Railroad, and we have pretty good traffic flow. Couple of the concerns that came out as we started looking at talking about the MTA's project over there is we're going to put some extra buses on there. We already have some periodic issues and questions about some of the large delivery trucks for Safeway. What would be a good way to help facilitate those continued uses, the expanded use for MTA, protect the traveling public as well as protecting the additional pedestrians that we're going to have in that area? And what came to the top real quickly was the idea of making it one way. Let's eliminate particularly some of the turning traffic coming out of Safeway with the big trucks so that we don't have the conflicts there. So that's kind of what we're looking at now that makes the most sense. And the top frame is kind of the, again, schematic. You'll see the section between 7th and 5th now is one direction from 7th to 5th. With the remainder of it staying pretty much the same way it is now. The big change you'll see, and we're believing this makes sense from just a general predilection of folks. I can't think of a better term right now, but generally speaking, folks driving, if you're on residential, downtown, commercial, slow speed streets, you tend to keep driving until you have to stop, and then you're going to make a turning movement. Or if you are on a long continued road, a lot of folks will end up getting like a block, maybe 2 blocks past where they really want to turn because they're just kind of going with the flow. So what we've done in the proposal here, what we're thinking makes the most sense, is we're going to change the traffic control at the intersection of 5th and Franklin a little bit. We're going to make the traffic coming out of the area around Safeway and the new Community Transit Center the dominant traffic. It will no longer have to stop until that traffic gets to 4th Street. The remaining 3 legs of 5th will now stop, which is really just a change on the westbound traffic from what's there now. The whole idea is the traffic coming out of the Franklin, the one-way section, will then have a tendency to migrate to 4th Street before it wants to make a turn. We see that as a big benefit because now the traffic that's wanting to get out onto Railroad is actually turning to an intersection that's controlled by a traffic light. And so we won't have the potential for the backups that we potentially could see if everybody stopped at 5th and then turned out and went out to the stop sign there. So let's go to the second picture. So what we have here is a little bit more detail, and this is still preliminary. We've got to work out some of the details. But this is more of a, what would the one-way section look like when we got it all done? And as you can see, we have 2 lanes coming through that section, both heading from 7th to 5th. Portion of one of the lanes is reserved for transit, and we did that in an attempt to be able to have the buses get in and out of the loading zone without a traffic conflict there. We've created a pocket on either end to let the 2 lanes merge and split, and then we've done a little bit of reconfiguration in the northwest corner, be the upper left side of the 5th Street intersection, to make sure that we don't have a situation where we have vehicles coming to an intersection basically head on there. And by pushing the 2 lanes fully into the south half of the right-of-way, we can avoid that potential conflict there. This preliminary configuration, you'll see the 2 lanes extend partway through the intersection of 5th before they merge back into a single lane there out in front of the Bank of America. That may or may not change as we move forward with this idea, if we do, but we'll work on it. One of the benefits that we did find in working this out, you'll see that in this layout, we actually have parallel parking stalls now instead of the typical on-street parking that we have in downtown. And you'll see in the 2 areas where parking stalls are, we're able to place those, we got a total of 15 stalls. Walking around out there right now with the current parallel, or
You said parallel.
parallel, that's angle parking. I just caught that. I wrote parallel up there. That's not right. Those are new angled stalls. We have a total of 15 of the new angled stalls. In the parallel configuration, best case, it appears we have 11 stalls available in that 2-block stretch. And probably more realistically, the way people park generally, it's more like 9 of them. So we actually have an increase in parking ability in this 2-block stretch with this layout. Again, we're here tonight really as a reaching out to the community. There's no formal process required by city code on these kind of traffic control changes, but we felt it was good that we've talked to businesses and owners around there previously and to some extent here in the last few weeks, but we wanted to make sure that in the process of going through this, we weren't missing something that the general public out there was seeing that might go into a final decision on what we should do here. So that's what we would expect over the next week or so, or this evening as the commission prefers. And with that, I think I'll leave it to questions.
Any questions or comments?
In looking at that, I'm wondering about pedestrian safety in the area. I don't see any crosswalks.
Again, the striping layout there was just a real basic layout, more to make sure that we could fit the angled parking stalls in and get the traffic lanes in a configuration that didn't create any vehicular issues out there. Pedestrian portions of that still would need to be developed and figured into that plan, but you have the 2 on the end, and MTA's original concept plans had basically a mid-block crossing that would come out of the entrance to the Community Transit Center and across to the sidewalk on the other side. So,
Okay, And assuming there are going to be a number of pedestrians in that area, so.
Exactly. So, yeah, the pedestrian piece really wasn't looked at on detail. It was really more to make sure we could get the vehicle traffic, buses in particular, and then the merging back into the two-way traffic in a safe and reasonable way, so.
That was all I had.
A couple things. One of them is, I noticed a lot of double parking by trucks from Safeway on Franklin there. How are we gonna deal with that when they get stacked up and they're waiting to get into the loading bays?
I think that's going to be a problem no matter what, potentially. I think that's working with the managers over there. This configuration theoretically makes that less problematic because we have provided some buffer spaces on that north side prior to that entrance into Safeway that would allow them to queue without being in a lane and causing problems there. So, again, double parking is not allowed, and, you know, it's a matter of working with the management over there as well as our PD to do proper enforcement.
And the other observation I've had is if you turn right on Fifth instead of going down to that light, you can sit a long time at that intersection trying to get on the railroad, and I just wonder if people don't go down to that light, say a big truck. You know,
Right.
It only takes 2 trucks to fill up that block.
That's true.
And how are, you know, if they're gonna sit there and wait for traffic, it's gonna back them up into that intersection. I don't know if it's worth trying to make a no right turn or something at that intersection going up Fifth.
It's something we can look at. I think just changing of the traffic control, not having vehicles stop there at that Fifth Street intersection is going to tend to move them to 4th Street. That's typically, you look at all of the transportation studies, that's one of the things you typically see. They make a maneuver, right turn, left turn, particularly in these types of streets, at a point where they stop, not at an intersection where they have a free travel through typically.
Well, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'll defer to that. And see how it
I'm
goes.
not either, but, you know, my basic background in it, I thought this was a pretty good plan, and we do bounce ideas off the traffic engineers at Shakar and Jewel in particular, and I did send this to Eric Johnson after I laid it out real quick, and the only thing he came back with is I had forgotten to put the merge lane on the 7th Street end of everything, and I had the transit only all the way to the intersection. He said, yeah, that one's probably not going to work. You might want a little space for people to get into the north lane.
And my comment is, and this was actually something that the transit, I get the name wrong, I'm just going, MTA, is that the right way? That they suggested that would, something they would like to see happen.
It started out as discussions about how could we make traffic flow better through that stretch there, and particularly with the added bus traffic. To be honest with you, I can't remember whether it was part of our team or part of their team through their pre-submittal conferences came up with the original concept of this, but it did come out of the preliminary work on the Mason Transit Community Center out
And
there.
I think it was a good idea to bring it up earlier and then talk to the other businesses around there and just kind of, keep them in the, I have no objections to it. It probably makes a lot of sense. You got a lot of big rigs that are, making things flow properly is probably a good thing, so. Is there any other questions or comments then? Okay, you're going to come back to us. Oh, yes. Mr. Clark.
Greg Clark, Public Works Director. One of the things that Mike and I did too to try and get the word out about tonight's meeting to share this with the community was we talked to Gordon Weeks, and he put a nice article in the Mason County Journal. And we also went on KMAS, or Mike did, and made an effort there to kind of let people know. So,
Great. All right, very good. Thank you. Next is our weekly commission reports. Commissioner Moore.
The only scheduled meeting I have this week is Mason Matters meeting on Thursday.
Commissioner Olson.
I too only have one meeting this week, a Board of Health meeting, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about some upcoming community events that really need some attendance to. Friday, the Senior Center is having a fundraiser karaoke bingo night. And I've been told you don't have to sing, it's not a requirement, but it's supposed to be fun. They do serve alcohol, so that always helps. On Saturday, they're having a car show down at Hometown Muffler and Bob's Tavern. And if you've been in the community for a while, you know how much Tad Smith does for the community with various fundraisers, Toys for Tots, Cancer Lifeline, and this is a free event they put on. And I'd really encourage everybody to go out and really support these small businesses that take this on themselves to really give back to the community. Hometown Muffler and Bob's Tavern are probably two of the top fundraisers in the community as far as private businesses go. So I would encourage everybody to get out and check that out. And then on Sunday, of course, is the pancake feed in Elam Park, and that's another great opportunity to get out there and have Vicki cook breakfast for us. And it's a great, and Dave goes too, I hear, so. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of talk about, I didn't know if I was going to do it or not, but I think I will. There was a recent short plat done up on North Cliff last year that the city extended sewer lines to. And during the winter, we had issues with runoff coming down from the short plat onto North Cliff. There was some photographs taken of garbage cans floating in North Cliff and gravel spilled out there. And over the years, we've known that that's one of the potential flood generators coming down off of North Cliff Road. So I was a little dismayed by it that, 2 blocks away, there's a builder that put in a development and had to adhere to very strict city standards. And this short plant was put into the county, so they weren't required to meet our standards, but I personally thought, and I think Public Works did too, that they should have to adhere. So I began a dialogue with county staff over there and requested some records and found out that they were indeed supposed to manage their stormwater, and they were not in compliance with that. So I kind of worked my way up the chain of command there and got that solved, that they are going to require the developer to adhere to the county stormwater management plan, which is pretty similar to what ours is. Maybe not quite as strict, but it's a good start. So I take a lot of pride and care in as a builder, that I want other builders and developers to do the same thing in the county and the city. So I was glad that they were very gracious in putting this together, and there will be further dialogue down the road possibly to make these part of their building permit conditions, not just suggestions. So I was glad to get that done, and the county was real amenable to working with me on that. So that's my report.
And this week, I will be attending a criminal justice meeting at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday evening. Next is a general public comment period. If you come to speak, we can speak at this time period, or if you had something that you wanted to talk about, a certain item on the agenda, we allow for public comment during that time also. And you would just need to come sign your name and let us know. This is one opportunity, and so we do have Mr. Tom Davis is going to come and talk for 3 minutes to us now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and good evening. My name is Tom Davis, and I have to apologize. I'm going to have to hit and run because the county has a PAC meeting, and they're waiting with bated breath for my comments. What I'd like to talk about is the recent topic of Forterra. Forterra as a visioning effort for the city. As you know, the county and Green Diamond and Forterra are looking at proposals that will encompass thousands of acres of clustered housing. Forterra and Green Diamond have sort of descended on this area to make sure that a lot of the land is left into conservancy. Now, that's not a bad thing, and visioning is certainly a good thing. My concern is to have one entity that is focused on a particular industry that is going to be instrumental in but advising to the future of the county and the city. And the reason I feel concerned is because I'm a big proponent of economic diversity. And if you come with a preconceived notion of how you want the county to be and how you want a city, municipality to be, you might overlook economic diversity opportunities. It would seem to me that you would lose some objectivity when you go to the planning stage and your recommendations to the various county agencies. And I think we have a long history here of timber being our primary economic driver. But as you can see, that market has changed quite a bit. It no longer provides the jobs as a great export market instead of a domestic market. There's been a huge reduction in the milling of dimensional lumber. So we want to approach this very carefully. We don't want to tie ourselves to economic poverty when we have other opportunities that are presenting themselves on almost a daily basis. This county is perfectly situated between two highly dense urban areas. It is in the catbird seat for cottage industries and to also attract some well-heeled residents to move here. It's got everything working for it. And I would hate to see that this gets short-circuited by some short-sightedness that is aimed at a special interest, which might not provide the economic stimulus that we so desperately need. So I urge you to take a look at this with a grain of salt if you do decide to go with Forterra in their visioning effort, and take a look at the larger picture and make sure that all the opportunities are being exploited. Thank you, and I have to run.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. All right, there will be other opportunities. Somebody would like to speak about something specific. At this point, we are going to recess out of our regular meeting and open a public hearing. And this hearing is going to be talking about our 6-year transportation improvement program for the city. It's something we have to do every year, and it's going to be presented to us by our city engineer, Mike Michael.
Thank you, Mayor, again. Yeah, as you mentioned, this is an annual process that we have to go through. RCW 3577 pretty much lays out the steps we have to go through, and this is our ability to get plugged into the larger state transportation program, which ultimately opens up our ability, when we have the match money, to get a hold of the federal dollars that we ultimately need to do these transportation projects here. Again, like with past years, we have a couple of components of that. We have our kind of our standard resolution language, which adopts a list of projects, which is attached to the back. Again, because of our funding shortfalls in the general fund in particular, the list isn't moving extremely fast. There are a couple minor changes that I wanted to point out this year. One, I just noticed this afternoon as I was getting ready, didn't get into the draft of the list, but anyway, does need to be made before we finalize the list. We've had one project drop off the list. We were fortunate to get TIB funding for the First Street section of the DOT SR3 project, the paver project last year, and so that was actually a project that was on our list, repaving that portion of the road up there, so we're one project shorter than we were last year. The other change is Project 5, it is, as it's listed now, its status, funding status has changed from planned to secured because of the receipt of the Safe Routes to School grant funding for that project. So that was an error in preparing the draft list that I just caught this afternoon that'll be fixed as part of finalizing this. So.
Say that again, Mike? That status is selected?
Yes. We actually have an award on that project.
I saw that and I just go,
Yep.
wow, it wasn't there last year.
Yeah, that project was, it was proposed because we were in the process of the award.
Good.
At that time. We had word that we were likely candidate, but we did not have official award of the project. We have that now, and so that does have to be changed on this list. But again, other than that minor change and removing one completed project, this is essentially the same, excuse me, Same slate of transportation projects that we've been looking at since long before I got here, actually. And, you know, routinely, several times a year, we keep our eyes out for new and potential funding sources to help us out with these projects. And we'll keep plugging away at them as both internal and external funding allow. But as required by the RCW 3577, we have to take a look at this list every year. The commission has to formally accept this list and pass a resolution to that. And as part of that resolution process, we have to open it up and give the public a chance to comment on the list of projects. So that's really what we're here for this evening, is that piece of it. And with that, I will leave it up to the commission for questions and ultimately any comment we may have.
Okay, so Commissioner Moore Olson, did you have any questions or comments about this?
I don't really.
Yeah, mine was on that Evergreen one. I was real dismayed when I saw that on there because I didn't remember from last year like that. And then my other question is, where are we at on that as far as it's been almost, it's over 2 years now that we were selected for that.
Just a little over a year ago that we got the formal award.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, because of the timing of the state transportation plan relative to the timing of our local transportation plan, our adoption of last year's plan to include that project actually didn't take effect till January 1st, and so we couldn't obligate the funds until the project was in the statewide list. And so we're working through that process right now. Expect to probably middle of next month be bringing back those documents to the commission.
The question I had, I got a phone call from somebody talking about Lake Boulevard and Pioneer Way.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten the call every 2 or 3 months, it almost seems, in the past 3 years, and it seems like, according to my graph right here, it's like #1 project other than our normal maintenance. And so I don't know if those people are here tonight, but I would bring it forward now to just say, if it's #1 on here, where are we on Lake Boulevard? Because that seems it's worked its way up the list, and if it's #1, what is our plan for that?
We are working through the design of that right now. We last fall secured funding for the design portion through the STP program, the federal program. We also secured construction funding through Transportation Improvement Board, and we're working through that process right now. We have about a 50% design complete on it. We're expecting that to move forward fairly rapidly now. We've gotten some choices worked through, particularly with a couple intersection reconfigurations that we needed to do. And we expect to have plans developed by maybe as early as late this year for advertising purposes, definitely by the first quarter of next year, and we're expecting to have that under construction by late spring, early summer of next year.
Okay, very good. Yeah, it looks like everything's in order here, and I don't have any other questions, but we will hear from the public now. And so it looks like we have someone else that's signed up here to speak about that. Thank you. And it looks like it's Greg Johnson. So you want to come up and speak to us, that would be.
Mr. Krantz and commissioners, you answered my question. I'm a long-time resident here in Mason County. I live out the Clallam Road. I'm what you call a looper. However, the Lake Boulevard Road is, in my opinion, is beyond repair, and it's been this way for quite some time. And so I just come down here tonight to see what you had planned for that road, which you had stated. But I'm here to plead with you if you could triage it above any other roads that you have in your agenda. So that's basically about it. I'd like to see something done to the road. It's a primary residence.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from that. So
Thank you.
thank you very much. Appreciate that, Greg. design has to be done before you can start the project. And so you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, right now it is our only major road project that's in design. We do have a couple other projects that we're working through design pieces with. We're getting ready to do the downtown, or the safe routes to school around Evergreen. We're working through the final design elements of the SR3 corridor projects. There's actually 2 of them that make up that overall project, as well as the other kind of old languishing project, the Downtown Creek Sidewalk Cap project. We're working through those as well. But as far as major road reconstruction, rehabilitation, Pioneer Way and Lake Boulevard, that is our focus this go-around. And again, we're progressing quite well through the design, and we're actually hopeful now that we will be ready to advertise this year sometime, but again, by the first quarter of next year at the latest is what we expect, so.
Very good. Did you want to?
Yeah, I think that after all the success that we had last summer in getting so many of our roads paved in town, that it's even more difficult to wait. And now we have the comparison of the great roads that have been completed and the ones that need it. So, yeah, you're on the list.
I think that's probably the best answer that we can give. And my apologies to the community that it takes this long. Money is money, and it is tough. Everything could use more money. I mean, the whole world could use more money. And Shelton, I feel really encouraged by what we did last year. The one question, I don't know if it was your group that talked to me on the phone about how we did so much up on that hill. That was all grant money. It wasn't our normal.
It was sewer money.
Sewer money,
Right.
all sewer money, and it wasn't out of our normal budget that all got done. I'm really glad that got done, but, for that community. But all I can say is Lake Boulevard is number 1 right there, and I will do everything I can do as a commissioner to make sure that we do get going on that, hopefully by early next year, and that'll be a big success story. So, sounds good. Any other questions or comments from the public about this? Hearing none, what we are going to do at this time is close this public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out, appreciate it. So, it appears that what staff is recommending is to place Resolution 10690714 regarding the adoption of the Comprehensive 6-Year Transportation Improvement Program for the City of Shelton for the year 2015 through 2020 on the consent agenda for July 28, 2014, and I believe that we concur to do that. So,
Yes.
moving on, have my commissioners had ample time to review the information in your packet concerning the consent agenda, and as you always have and always will, could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda. Vouchers numbered 83735 through 83860 in the amount of $494,209.67. Payroll warrants numbered 71737 through 71920 in the amount of $603,668.58. Commission meeting minutes from business meeting of July 7th, 2014, and study session of July 14th, 2014. Dewatering Solutions Award Form, increase from previously approved $52,296.53 to $53,546.53 to include freight. Ordinance number 1853-0714, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington relating to the waterworks utility of the city, including the sewage system, providing for the issuance of a water and sewer revenue bond, 2014, in the principal amount of $3,358,000 to redeem the city's water and sewer revenue bond anticipation note, 2012, and pay costs of issuing the bond and repaying the note, authorizing the sale of the bond to the United States of America, acting through the United States Department of Agriculture, and fixing the terms and covenants of the bond. Ordinance number 1854-0714, second reading. an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, amending Chapters 5.46 and 8.68 of the Shelton Municipal Code relating to special events permits.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda passes. Item number G is old business, and there is no old business at this time, but we have some new business before us, and the first will be an ordinance. And it's going to be a briefing presented by our Community and Economic Development Director, Steve Goin.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is an ongoing discussion of some various code amendments that we're proposing this year. As an outcome to an audit we received, there was a review of some of our regulations that we wanted to ensure they were consistent with emerging court decisions, growth management hearings, board decisions, new statutory provisions, and one of those that was identified was provisions relating to temporary homeless encampments. In summary, this would create a process to establish a conditional use permit application process with conditions for allowing these encampments to be placed on properties where there's a church or religious organizations, as a means to ensure that they are managed properly, at the same time allowing the church to exercise their religious freedoms that our Constitution states. And a court decision at the Washington State Supreme Court really triggered this to be looked at more closely by cities and counties. There are other cities that have preceding us in taking this type of action. And our objective really is to allow that religious exercise, at the same time protecting the public, making sure these things are healthy, that everyone's safe, and that's the objective of these regulations. There's a number of provisions and limitations that are listed here, and I'll go through those briefly with you. That includes a perimeter of 20 feet buffering the encampment from the neighboring properties, that the perimeter would be screened, so there'd be a visual screening between the neighboring properties and the encampment, that any lighting that's proposed in the encampment will be downward shielded, wouldn't spill onto the neighbors. There's a limitation on the number of occupants, currently at 100. The provisions allow us to further reduce the number of occupants based on criteria that we could establish, but the provision exists for the city to determine whether 100 is too many or too few. That's something we can talk about in more detail if you'd like. Requiring parking is one of the elements here. There's probably going to be staff and others supporting this facility that need to come and go and have a place to park. In addition, minors would be prohibited from staying overnight with certain limitations. Another provision is with the code of conduct for those that are staying within the camp. They would have to agree to a certain code of conduct that would include prohibiting possession of drugs or alcohol, no violence. People acting up or acting out would be told to leave. No open flames. There would be one central communal kitchen that would serve meals, but there wouldn't be open fires. There wouldn't be that type of thing. We don't want to endanger somebody. A tent can easily catch on fire. That type of activity would be prohibited. They wouldn't be allowed to trespass onto the neighboring property. The encampment would be limited in its location, and that trespassing, that type of activity would be prohibited as well. And littering around the campsite as well as the surrounding properties would be activity that's prohibited. The provisions would include a managing agency to oversee this, and part of their duties would include making sure they know who's there, being able to provide a list of those individuals to the police department. If someone has a warrant for their arrest, for instance, the police can pick that up on this list and take action accordingly, and we know who's there. Like I said, there would be this communal kitchen, and that would help to ensure that sanitary conditions are maintained for the residents. There would be Santa cans and those types of facilities as well. Wouldn't impact the neighboring properties. And there's a number of other items that were included in the draft ordinance. Some of those you might have picked up had a kind of a dark shading on them. We're not fixated on those numbers or those specifics. If that's something you want to consider, those are just targets that we threw out there for us to hit, like the buffering, the number of residents, those types of features. We're not asking for any action tonight. We're simply bringing this up for discussion and wanted to set a public hearing. At the public hearing, we'll take further public comment, and then we'll come back with any kind of revisions that you'd like to see for final reading and action.
Questions or comments?
I had two questions. The first one is what constitutes a visual screening, and I know that it's referred to in another ordinance, and I did not take time to read that. What my immediate question really is does the 6-foot visual screening have to meet the requirements of an historic district if a church is located within an historic district and wants to apply for a homeless encampment?
Without looking at the definition that's in the code, the visual screening, I don't believe here is intended to be permanent screening. This would be something that would probably go away with the use after the 90 days is over. In fact, there was another provision that talks about within a week of the camp closing, there's an expectation that the grounds will be returned to their original manner. So those types of things would be a consideration as well, whether there's permanent facilities. They would have to be something that I believe all agree would be something that's valuable after the camp is gone.
Okay. And then my second question is, I understand that it has to be a religious organization who applies for this. Does the property have to be adjacent to the church or the church? I mean, I didn't find anything that said that it couldn't be property that was elsewhere that was owned by the church.
Could it be property that's owned by the church but not at their church facility? I believe that would be allowed. I'll defer to Kathleen on this, I think.
And the property just has to be owned by a religious organization. It doesn't have to be attached to a church building.
Commissioner Olson?
I don't really have any questions. I think it's a very well-written ordinance with a very delicate subject, so it's pretty well thought out, I think.
I was questioning some of the numbers, and what it looked like to me is this isn't kind of like one size fits all. So what I guess I would do, say as an input, if we were going to have this ordinance, and to the best of my knowledge, we haven't really been presented by any group that they want to do this. This is to have something in effect if it was an issue that we were going to address. Is that?
That's correct. We haven't received any application or even discussed this in terms of another organization coming to us. And we could probably add some language that would more specifically dictate how we determine those numbers and that size quotient into what we're facilitating here. With some thought, we could probably come up with something that would probably be mutually agreeable. There might be a larger facility that feels like a smaller number is not enough, but there obviously is some pretty small sites where a larger number wouldn't make a lot of sense either. So coming up with a way to determine that probably would be helpful.
Probably what I was thinking about is in terms of the fact that our city population around 10,000, that I was looking at the number of 100 people, and I was kind of thinking, too, when you have a smaller community, churches can be smaller too, and that a number more like 50 might make more sense to me rather than 100. The other thing is we just got a grand opening on a homeless shelter here, which should actually help quite a bit towards even making this. I would hope this option wouldn't have to be exercised. I mean, I would like to think that
Sure.
the multi-million-dollar facility that we just put in would make a big dent in this process. But I'm not against putting a policy but I think that it has to be custom fit for what our city, you know, church sizes, and also probably how many, you know, people want to live in a tent city in our city. I don't know that there's 100, you know, or that would be a number. One other comment, in reading this, it talks, and I was kind of, this term was interesting, it's called a religious, what, you call it a religious thing? What's that? A religious organization? And I was wondering that term, I've heard the term faith-based nonprofits. That's what I've kind of heard used a lot more when it talks to the social workings of the community and faith-based nonprofits. That's what I've heard more of. But is this religious organization, is that a term that's used in this kind of thing?
I believe the intent simply is a church facility or a church that's recognized. I don't know if Kathleen wants to add to that.
It's defined by the state statute, which I'm looking for right now. It says, religious organization means the federally protected practice of a recognized religious assembly, school, or institution that owns or controls real property. So, federally recognized, thank you. Could you hear me? Federally recognized religious institution, meaning it's not meant to exclude synagogues, it's not meant to exclude other types of temples or places of worship. It's not just churches, it's all forms of religion.
I was just curious if the term, it seems like you got this from documents or something, this must be the term that they use.
The statute I referred to, I think it's 35A 21-160, is a provision that the state directed that basically stated what the objectives were for these regulations and what cities couldn't do, what was out of bounds. And within that, they defined religious organizations. I think I just copied that.
Yeah, okay, that was just a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, and the state law, as Steve kind of alluded to earlier, gives religious organizations the right to do this and prohibits cities from stopping them. So even if we don't enact this code, a church in our city could decide to team up with an organization like SHARE and host a tent city, and the only difference would be we would not have any regulations in place.
So I can go to my pastor on Sunday morning and say, we are no longer a faith-based nonprofit, we are a religious organization. And I got that from Steve Goins, right? I guess so.
I'm a conduit on
Yeah,
that.
no pun intended on that one, but, okay, I think we've talked about it, and it sounds like you're gonna come back with some information, and you want to set this?
Yeah, the request was to set a public hearing for August 18th, which is an evening meeting.
Yes.
I forgot to sign in, but I would like to speak to this.
Okay, well, you're more than welcome to do that, but you will have to sign in. So if you want to come forward, sign your name and address, and then when you get to the podium, you will state your name for the public record. That's what's written on my little sheet right there.
Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. I've read through this ordinance. I really don't have any serious problems with it. I am concerned, however, about the timing. I spoke briefly with Mr. Goins earlier and learned that there is no pending application. Nobody has come to him saying they want to do this. But the commission is in the process of taking applications for and constituting a Committee on Human Services to deal specifically with issues of poverty in the city. One of the charges of that committee is to evaluate and comment on pending city decisions having potential adverse effects on those in poverty. It seems to me that this ordinance will impact those in poverty one way or another. I don't know enough to know whether it's positively or adversely. But I think it would be a show of taking the task force seriously, taking the committee seriously to hold off on considering this ordinance until the committee is formed and has a chance to comment, as they will be directed to do, on the impact such an ordinance is likely to have on those in poverty. So I would ask that you hold off on consideration until a later time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I will respond to that and say that, and very rarely do we do this, but I think that's an excellent idea. And now, whether or not we want to do that or not, but it does make sense that that would be a committee that would have some input and also time to study that. And so I'm kind of intrigued by the concept that we have a committee that we're forming, and this is one of those. I don't know that getting this can be tweaked and adjusted after the fact. Also, what do you think about that, Mr. Goines? You're requesting that we move this forward, and but we are in the process of putting our Human Services Committee together.
That train is in motion also. I was intending to bring an update to the commission next week on the status of that committee. I think we probably could continue this process and meet this objective at the same time. Our request now is simply to set the public hearing for August 18th. We don't have to adopt anything at that point. We can have more information on the status of the committee and take that into consideration, and you'll have about 3 or 4 weeks to figure this out.
City Administrator Dave O'Leary.
Yeah, I appreciate what Marilyn is suggesting. It makes absolute good sense. The challenge that you have is that this isn't as if somebody decides that they want to set up a homeless encampment today.
Yeah.
It happens without rules. So no one gets to look at what the rules might be for establishing a homeless encampment unless we establish the rules. So you can just do it. So it isn't, so if someone doesn't do it and it happens before we get this done, then it'll just be done.
Could you speak to that, Steve?
Marilyn, we can't, unfortunately, we got the comments or the 3-minute hunks, and we do that, and so that's kind of the rules of the way we do this. But I guess I'm open to hear if my fellow commissioners had another.
I'll promise to follow up with Marilyn, and because I don't want to create I don't want to have a misunderstanding or maybe I've got a misunderstanding about how this works. But as I understand it, the reason we were doing this is because there's no zoning in place for these things, which implies that you don't have any rules. So, but if I've got that wrong, I'll stand corrected and suggest that we give them the time. So.
This is the time then, if fellow commissioners, if you have.
I absolutely think that Marilyn's statement makes a lot of sense and is something that we're working towards as far as having that group that will make recommendations to us as we're looking at policies like this. I don't really know how the timing, if someone came in, if we had an application for a homeless encampment, or if someone decided to do that, we would still have to allow it.
Do you want to talk about that, Steve? Because we talked about that before. Maybe you've got updated information because we talked about this quite some time ago.
The ability to condition the use is what you're gaining here, and the belief is that's a general public good. It's good for the neighboring folks. It's good for the residents of the camp to have these provisions so that there's some expectation of what's going to happen, and there's a lot of safety provisions in place. You may get those if someone comes in your community and wants to start this, but you're going to get whatever they provide if there's not a mechanism to ensure that that's laid out clearly. what's happened in the past that ultimately drove this court decision was the city that was sued just refused to process this and didn't allow it to occur. And the church finally took them to task on that and prevailed in court. I don't know if Kathleen wants to add to that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And then as a consequence, the legislature passed that RCW provision that's cited in the ordinance that gives religious organizations an affirmative right to do this. So yes, if your local Catholic church decided to partner up with an organization for the homeless and host an encampment, they could come to you and force you to grant them a permit. And what this ordinance does is it allows you to set the ground rules for that permit.
So moving from this point forward, I guess I would say, taking Marilyn's comments into consideration, which I think are good comments, and but I do sense that there would be a timing on this that we probably better be moving. I would recommend we move forward with the recommendation of staff, and that in this process that we will have something, and which can be changed. I mean, we can put this in, and we can change numbers on this at any time, and that I think probably I would lean towards respecting Marilyn's comments and position on that, and the staff's, that it probably, and legal counsel, it all rounds out a little bit, that we probably, it'd be a good idea to move forward in this process. So that's probably where I stand. And
It seems it's taken quite some time to form this task force anyway, and I would be comfortable with Marilyn suggests with a limited amount of time. I think that, like you said, that one of the charges was that if it adversely affects the homeless, and I really don't see this being an adversely effect on them, it's actually beneficial for them. So I would be willing to wait a little while, but not 4 or 5 months. I think we need to react.
so your recommendation, I'm sorry, Commissioner Moore, but your recommendation was to place a public hearing for August 18th.
That's correct.
So I think I'm comfortable moving ahead, and with the understanding that maybe one of the first duties of the Human Services Committee should look at it and suggest any changes that we might need to make at that time.
Okay, so it appears that we concur on moving forward with the existing, or the recommendations from staff to place this on a public hearing on August 18th to receive written and oral testimony on the proposed regulations. Very good. Next is a wastewater treatment plant additional items list here, and our city engineer, Mike Michaels, is going to talk to us about that.
Yeah, you're getting to hear from me a lot this evening, so
Yes.
thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Just to preface this briefing, really what we're here for this evening on this is just kind of a final bit of direction on the last little piece of the puzzle of this project, so they can go back and do some contracting work, particularly with our consultant, to bring forward in the end. Basically what we have was, we're kind of running down to the end of the wire with this project, funding in particular. We've got about 10 months to use up the funding and to make use of the funding and complete any enhancements and upgrades that we desire using those funds. And as you remember, we're fully into the final grant piece at this point, so this is all grant dollars we're talking about. We've gotten a lot of work done. We have a really good plan out there. We've gotten some other enhancements and some improvements done, some restoration that really needed to be done and should have been done. But we got a couple things left. We've got a contract out right now for the last set of mechanical enhancements to the plant. We're getting ready to meet with the contractor for a pre-construction conference this week. The piece we still need there, and we purposely held off setting up the scope and budget for it because we knew there was potential for other engineering work, is the support services from the design engineers to help us manage that final piece of construction and certify some of the mechanical components out there. The other needed item that we have, and this is bullet number 2, is a recent occurrence, and recent occurrence also in the fact that it became eligible for the funding. As many folks know, back in April, Windows XP became no longer supported by Microsoft. That has created a lot of concerns for security risks in particular, and our wastewater treatment system is highly dependent on computer controls now, and those computer controls are networked and connected to the broader internet and city networks in general. USDA, though this is not typical, was able to find an exemption in their rules that allows them to fund replacing the software out there. And so that's the other piece. We have computers and human-machine interface, basically the little touch screens. They're all basically computers. I don't remember the exact number of them at this point in the discussion, but there are several of them that are still under the XP operating system, about $60,000 worth of effort. Assuming we have to completely replace them, we're still working to see if we can just do software upgrades to them. That's a question that still has to be answered, but either way, we really need to do that to eliminate that potential security risk that's out there. The final pieces, and really it's morphed from a single piece into really 2 pieces now, is some additional storage and utility staff spacing out there to meet not only sewers needs potentially, but our other utility groups' needs for the short term as well as the long term of both the sewer and those other utilities. The original concept for this new space that came out of the reports that went to USDA as part of the funding request package really is morphed into 2 components. And the first component is a repurposing, reconfiguration, a portion of the north end of the biosolids handling facility. As we've gotten into operation, we found out the demand for the product is quite high, at least right now. And so the need to store the material really isn't at the level we had anticipated. So we've come up with a concept in the north third approximately of the storage area of a way to modify that to be more versatile now in the short term for either sewer or some of the other utility purposes, but be able to easily be converted back to biosolids storage if the need arises in the future. Regulations change and we can't apply this material as broadly as we can now. The demand diminishes. John brought up a good point. We don't know, Tacoma, Pierce County has been using the products for a while, but we don't know that over time the benefits wouldn't build up in the soil and the need might reduce as farmers get better soil basically. So we've structured a way that we can use it now for other types of storage, vehicles, equipment, etc. But be able to real easily use it for the original purpose if that's needed. The second piece of this added utility staffing and storage is a smaller but still an additional building on site. This would potentially house future sewer and or stormwater staff, but in the short term could be used for our current perceived housing needs for our solid waste facility or utility, for example. Main caveat with USDA is whatever the use of these facilities are, it has to benefit the sewer utility, and that can be done through lease agreements between the various utilities, similar to what we do now with various buildings and equipment. Based on all of the current status of the completed work, what we see left for funding based on review with USDA and others, what we believe these costs are for the design and construction services, as well as construction of these added facilities and computer work, we're right there. It's close. We may be a little bit over, we may be a little bit under the funding that's available. And we see the way to continue to hedge that actually will be on the last building if the commission chooses to go that far. and we can structure that from a pretty complete shell up to a complete and usable building. And we can do that in the bid package to be able to take advantage of the market as it occurs over the next several months. So basically this afternoon, or this evening now, we're here to get the commission's sense on which direction. Basically, we have 2 needed items that really are a must-do, and then we have 2 levels of additional improvement, and want to get a sense of where the commission feels they want us to go on that, and then I can start working with our consultant team to start the design services portion of those contracts so we can move into any final bid documents that we may need.
Questions or comments for Mike Michael?
That's a lot on just one little page there. I guess I missed something in here as far as what funding do we have now for which projects?
This is all of this work, whatever level the commission chooses, is funded by the final ARA grant from USDA.
Okay.
And that's part of the expediency here. That money is set to expire in the end of June next year. And so we've got to get these last pieces in place and get them moving so that we can get the expenditures behind us in time to bill USDA and get the
Oh, I see.
reimbursement.
Okay. I was missing something there. It seems like all of these portions of this project have been planned out and have been approved already by USDA. So I'm not really certain why we wouldn't go ahead with all 4 portions here, is my comment.
Let me just say, basically, you've already spelled out the strategy. Do the most important things first. The last is the building, and if the money will only give you a shell that needed to be finished at a later date, then you even have a little contingency plan that we're not planning on extra funding. We're planning to use this money up on projects that need to be done. With the priority list you've given us, it makes sense to me, and I think I would approve that. So is that kind of, so we build it out till the money's gone, and if we have to stop halfway through the last building, we still have a functional storage building.
Yeah, I just wondered, the need for this extra building, is it really there, or is it just because we have the potential money, we're just gonna build it just to have it, and then can we sustain it and heat it and pay for the utilities and all that?
It's an item was identified in the original project reports to USDA, and it really, the space identified there really had to do with future growth in the community and the staffing needs that would come with that future growth, particularly relative to the sewer utility and the stormwater utility. I'm not quite sure why the stormwater utility got tossed into that mix, but it did. What we see now, though, is we're getting really pinched for space down at the current shop site. And solid waste in particular, with their new quite large trucks, is a prime candidate to try and relocate out of there to a better facility and kind of even out spaces.
How do they justify that in relation to, how does that benefit the treatment plant?
It benefits the sewer utility in just like streets and storm and solid waste now pay a lease payment to water for use of the facilities at the shop site. If we were to choose to move solid waste to these new facilities here, they would pay a lease payment to sewer for the space that they're using on the treatment plant site.
Well, I also thought we budgeted for a building down at the shop. As I remember.
You want me to type it in?
I can cover it, and you can chime in if I miss something. Yes, we did. However, as we've gotten into it, we've run into some roadblocks, some development issues that are making that concept a little bit impractical. The site is pretty well constrained already, and so some of the stormwater issues though they could be worked through, are starting to add a little bit of cost factors. One of the biggest issues that we found is, as we've looked at the site, there's some issues with property ownership and access rights along a portion of vacated Pine Street there. Pine Street? Yes, Pine Street. That need to be dealt with prior to a building permit being issued for that property. And that's going to require a survey. It should be fairly easy to straighten out, but it's going to require a fairly expensive survey to get the data to get it straightened out. And so the cost of that storage building down there now is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that building still doesn't address staff needs, staff space needs that are going to come as the community grows into the future, so.
Any other questions or comments from Mike Michael?
So you do, the priorities would be the upgrade to the computers, which is a necessity. And then I'm still kind of in fog on this building, I guess. It's not needed now.
It's not needed now, but we do see a use now that it could fill.
And if nothing else, you would use it potentially as a rental for another utility.
Correct.
And that's legal under the grant money.
Yeah, I've got a recent email from Dave Donnell at USDA confirming previous discussions that he and I had had. In fact, I asked the question about how would we determine the rent, can it be a token? And I kind of assumed that USDA would assume that that's not advisable, but said we'd have to do a basic market analysis and charge something reasonable based on the existing market for that type of space.
Your Honor.
Yes, City Administrator David Berg.
I think the point is two things. At some point in the future, whether it's 5 years or 20 years, there'll be a need for additional facilities at the sewer plant. You can do it today for nothing because it's grant dollars to fund it. You just had to have an additional use, and we had a department and a program that's paying lease payments currently to the water fund, and they'd just be paying to the sewer fund instead, and we'd have an interim use. I don't know that we'd be looking at doing this except for we have the capacity to get grant dollars to get it done. Otherwise, we'd wait and build it when we needed it for we'd continue as long as we could at the shop. And you're right, that we had planned on doing building at the shop. In fact, what we started with was a more elaborate building, and we scaled it back so we could have, so it could be less costly. That was part of our budget deliberations, and as it turned out, even scaling it, when we scaled it back, it just wasn't feasible for the dollars that we put into it. So we haven't, they were going to produce more before, but you asked about it, and it's I hadn't planned to tell you about it till we had a little more information together, but that's where the discussion's been going.
Excuse me, Mike, the building would be a metal building?
No, it would be similar construction to the buildings that are on site now. It'd probably be a mix of metal and brick fascia, like the biosolids building, like the enhancements to the control building, et cetera. So
Metal roof?
Metal roof, yes. Yeah, it'll be very similar architecture to the buildings that we have constructed as part of the project.
Just for that type of building, my father built a metal building over 50 years ago. It's still standing, and structurally, I don't know how much, I don't think there's a real end in its life, unless you have a big bulldozer or someone to push it over. So I would tend to think if the building has a purpose for the city, that putting it in at this time would probably be a good idea, especially it's not out of our general fund.
There'll be a little bit less money to the water fund from stormwater, but it's probably negligible. That's the assumptions I've been making, but we haven't seen the numbers on that. So.
Right. Yeah, that would be a future decision of the commission on how we wanted to do some shuffling there, but right now the question is to be able to get moving forward, to make use of this money if that's the decision, is to get that piece of the guidance right now so that we can move forward with some consultant contract amendments.
It's not a gold-plated plumbing fixture.
It is not a gold-plated plumbing
It's a
fixture.
practical, functional space that the city could easily use.
It is, the intent right now as it is conceived would be for about 3,400 square feet of staff-type space, potentially offices, break facilities, those types of uses, and then a couple additional spaces set up for vehicle equipment type storage, so.
Commissioner Moore, do you have any more comments on this?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, so it's staff's recommendation here to, excuse me, place this, okay, I have to read my fine print here. Looks like I was going to say put it on a consent agenda, but it looks like you're going to proceed forward with additional work items identified by the USDA -RD and prepare the amendment to the current parametrics contract that is necessary to complete the prior funds expiring in 2015. So I believe we concur to go forward with this.
With that, I will begin working with parametrics, and we will have a contract amendment with you within the next 2 or 3 weeks for review and approval there.
All right, very good. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, the Civic Center ultraviolet resistant roof coating. And this is going to be discussed to us by our Public Works Director, Greg Clark.
Commissioners, Mayor, thank you.
Ultraviolet.
We have a screaming offer on the table that's kind of a hot one in that, in short, we planned in our budget process last year to try and get a roof coating on this building we're in at the Civic Center here. And all our contacts with the construction world showed that the cost of doing this coating, and Kurt Johnson, my facilities manager, did a lot of research in finding good products to look into. And it was estimated around $150,000 to put this coating on the building. It's not a re-roof. It doesn't require the structural type of stuff that a re-roofing would. This is just a coating that goes on it. It's multiple layers, very durable, provides probably a life expectancy somewhere above 10 years, if not longer. Seems like a really good value for the dollar. We took this work, we talked to 4 different vendors that we had kind of pre-qualified, and then we did a walkthrough with them on the building here on June 9th, and then we asked for quotes on June 30th, which we opened, and we had the 4, Roof Doctor, the Chehalis Sheet Metal, Honor Roll, and Paint Crafters Plus did the walkthrough. The only bids we received were from Honor Roll and Paint Crafter, and to do the entire building, the bid that Paint Crafters is offering us is for $69,358 to do a roof that we estimated last year at $150,000. We need to add a little bit more money to this as a contingency factor from the standpoint that there may be things that as we, do prep on the building that may need to get taken care of. So I've asked for an additional $5,000 here in what we're asking for a budget modification tonight for. But if we were to have $75,000, we could do this roof this year and have it done and take care of a lot of the leaks that, Kurt's been chasing up there. This is a very, like I say, a very durable product. We just use the same product, in fact, at the fire station to seal up some of their leaks up there. We would like to see the commission endorse this. We actually need action tonight because of the timing of the bid. It took us a while to review all the qualifications and chase down the references on both of these bids. The second bid came in at $137,992, so it's, again, almost twice what this low bid is. The contractor very much wants to do the work. He comes well recommended, and we feel it's a good value. if we had to do this over 3 years, which was the plan, we'd end up with seams and things that would be more difficult to make if we do it all in a uniform one-time application. Instead of spreading it out over 3 years, it just will, I think, be a better product in the end, a better job. And there also, if we never know what the future holds, we would do this year, and then in the coming years to get bids, we'd at least have the remobilization costs of the contractor coming back on site, and so our recommendation, our hope is that the commission will endorse this to move forward to allow a budget modification to happen so that we can change the budgeted line item right now that we have in there for $50,000 to increase that to $74,358.71 to allow this to be done this year. So that is our hope and our recommendation, and with that I'll answer any questions.
Questions or comments for Greg Clark?
It makes me real nervous when I see two bids that are just 180 degrees apart.
Yeah.
I mean, and then your own estimate was,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I trust that you guys are professionals and know what you're doing, but that scares me.
It was a very low bid.
Yeah,
And I
I mean,
believe
it's
the
like-
gentleman, the owner of the company is wanting this to fill a void that he just needs the work. And like I say, we did the reference checks, and the prior clients of his have been happy with his work. So there isn't any reason to think that, we're going to have a little contract with him. We were unable to attach it to this tonight. The way the staff recommendation will be that we'll go with Dave to review that. It's just a boilerplate standard maintenance contract that will have the specifics of this, but it should be, I don't know.
Well, he did the fire station roof, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you were happy with his work there?
Well, he didn't do that roof. I can't remember if it was the same contractor or not. I think it was Honor Roll that did the fire station, but
Same
it was
product?
same product.
Same product,
Yes, but
yeah?
it seems like
Too good to be true.
almost too good to be true, but it's true. So,
Well, you have a contract, and he has to fulfill the contract, and it has to be the product, it has to be to the specs of the work, and so,
yeah, there's one other thing I should mention, that in order to install this product, you need to be certified for to acquire and do this process. It's a 3-type coating process, and this company is certified, and it all looks good, except like Commissioner Olson says, the price is like, oh my gosh, what's going on here?
there's a lot of profit out there sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I think, I can't tell you for sure because we haven't got in, and I haven't talked to Kathy about it, but we may very easily be into strategic reserves right now. So it's what the strategic reserves are there for, so you can take advantage of opportunities like this. But 50,000's been budgeted, so we're talking about just adding the additional amount to that, about 25.
Well,
But man, if you're looking long-term, it's a
good deal.
half price, so it's, and then it's done, not only that, so. That was, and I agree with you, Mike, this is exactly my reaction when they brought it over, and it was their reaction, and they went, geez, we gotta check this guy out.
Yeah.
So we've had the bid for this month, and they spent a good deal of their time, so we gotta get this up for a decision.
No, I appreciate it. I'm sure
So-
they did their homework, and utmost confidence, you guys, so yeah.
Yeah, Kurt actually brought this to me early on, and my first guidance to him was,
Too good to
it's
be
a maintenance, it seems too good.
Bait
You
and switch
call
or
him and make
something,
sure
yeah.
that he doesn't have an error, give him an opportunity, and he's stayed firm with it. The manufacturer actually highly recommended this firm, so given those and the typical construction of our contracts, yeah, there's always some risk there, but it's pretty limited in, the way we manage construction
Yeah, you
and
manage
large
it,
maintenance
sure.
projects. It's pretty well, the risk is pretty well managed for us, so.
All right, very good. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you. I guess we need a motion on this. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the budget modification and authorize signature of the contract using one-time money or cash reserve from the general fund to increase the roof coating budget line to do the complete project.
I would second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion passed. Okay, so next on the agenda is an administration report.
Couple of things. Just the first one that's listed is that starting in August, I'll be out doing presentations to the various civics organizations that I go around every year and tell them basically what's going on in the city. I haven't got it all done yet, but I'm getting more and more inclined to start thinking about the future instead of the past, although I'll probably talk about the budget a little bit. We're not out of the woods, but I'm going to be more along the lines of this is what we have planned in our strategic plan. Here's all the seeds that we've planted, and we're ready to see them grow and create some prosperity around here. So,
Right on.
the other thing is we met today with the Department of Ecology to talk about legislative options and what we might do. Our focus has been up to this point was to potentially ask for the legislature to approve money for the Centennial Clean Water Fund, which has been traditional in the state for a couple of decades now. And essentially it's for low-income communities to have a place to get funding that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get. It is grant dollars that come from that fund. We've even been approved recently for some Centennial funds, but we had a variety of different questions that we wanted to ask them about whether we thought it was a good vehicle for this, and I think generally speaking it is. There may be some amendments that we may want to make to the way that it works, but I think they should be fairly simple. But I think that's probably where Amanda and I will suggest that we go in order to be able to do this. That has some advantages. If you can use an existing program as opposed to a new one, you have less weight to carry when you work your way through the legislature. It seems to be pretty well made already for what we're looking for, though. So, and I think that what we'll just need to get some more money. One of the things we learned today is that the fund used to have around $90 million a year, and because of the recent cutbacks, they've lowered it down to $50 million. So we're going to crunch the numbers, try to identify what the needs are amongst the stakeholders that we've identified, the other cities, and try to come up with a number in the very near term. We've got to get something queued up. I'm a little worried about not having enough time to get input from other stakeholders that we're planning to talk to, such as counties and sewer districts. But I think we're to the point with budgets being put together that we've got to get a number up, and so we'll be working on that in the next week or so. And I'll report back to you as soon as we've got something put together. So that's the administration report for now.
Thank you very much, Dave O'Leary. Appreciate the work that you're doing on that, and also Amanda, our intern. And it's the one thing that I found in talking to legislators and people, citizens, is it's a universal. It's like there's not a lot of disagreement that the way the system is on cities that don't have huge revenue generators, that something has to happen and change. And so hopefully this is our answer, and it will help the city of Shelton and also other cities in the state address their sewer infrastructure financial problems. So let's see here. And general public comment, any more comments? Hearing none? Oh, come on up, Jim. We started at about 4 o'clock, and we're just, excuse me, we're just getting a little tired, some of us senior officials. No, 3 minutes. We welcome you to the commission meeting. It is a job, you know.
And we appreciate it.
State your name for the record, please.
Jim Morrell with Peninsula Credit Union. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, I was not able to be here last week, and I know it wasn't on your agenda for tonight, but it will be in the future, just to voice my support for the Downtown Visioning Project. I think that the way that I've thought about this, as it was explained in the media and such, is sort of like a remodel. The city of Shelton has a rich history. It's got the bones and architecture to prove that. And I really, over the past 2+ years that I've been here, see this as an opportunity for the city to take advantage of putting together a plan that would help that remodeling of the future of the city of Shelton, something that would be vibrant, something that would support the rest of the other future plans, some of which have been discussed tonight, to make this an attractable place for people to come. There's been a lot of work that has gone into the relationship with Forterra, and I would urge the commission and the leadership of the city and the community leaders in the city to step forward and support this effort as well. My time in evaluating various options as part of the SAVOR Committee with the Chamber, we looked at various options, and this really was an option that brought together a variety of different perspectives. It was not cutting short that level of input, which I think is really necessary in order to create that forward-looking type of plan. So I thank you for that support, and I'm under 3 minutes, so have a good evening, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for your comments. All right, next is administration final touches. Yes, Mr. Clark?
I do have a touch I'd like to do. We didn't get it on the looking ahead, but next week I'll be bringing a briefing report on a material purchase for our Second and Grandview new water line that our crews will be installing this summer. The dollar amount of that particular material purchase is over the threshold that requires commissioner endorsement. So you'll see that next week.
Very good.
Anything else?
I would just like to say thank you very much for your group for always thinking about how you can save the city money. Because if that's my middle name, that's my middle name. I want to try and save the city money, and in coming up with creative ideas on many projects, especially I've seen over the past probably 6 months, I have seen in many ways ideas that have helped save the city money rather than just doing the carte blanche thing there. So anyway, always appreciating that. All right, our next meeting will be on July 28, 2014 at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This meeting is adjourned.